Iranian TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
The Philippines and Muslim separatists signed preliminary peace pact. NATO airstrike kills 3 children in southern Afghanistan. And Yalla Vote mobilizes the Arab American community to vote in the presidential election. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
The Philippines government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front signed an initial peace plan in Manila that would end the armed conflict that has lasted over 40 years between the two sides. The plan stipulates that the Liberation Front would abandon its arms in exchange for the establishment of a new autonomous region for the Muslims named Bangsamoro in the southern part of the Philippines.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment we have anticipated. One that all Filipinos and perhaps many in the world have been waiting for.
A framework agreement crowns tough negotiations that lasted 10 years between the Philippines government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front.
Much work remains to be done in order to fully reap the fruits of this framework agreement. There are obligations that must be respected.
Today, we extend the hands of friendship and partnership to the President.
Today, we extend the hands of friendship and partnership to the President in the Philippines to work together to rebuild the country, attain justice, and restore normalcy to the lives of the masses of our people.
Violence and restore normalcy to the lives of the masses of our people.
These moments that were described by both sides as historical form the starting point of a new page of in-depth negotiations, scheduled to end in 2016 by determining and implementing the details of the initial agreement, which was struck through the mediation of neighboring country Malaysia. The most notable stipulation of the peace plan is the permanent ceasefire in return for establishing an autonomous region in the southern part of the country named Bangsamoro, or the Muslim state. The people are looking at the settlement with cautious optimism and hope that this step will contribute to restoring life to its normal path.
We were forced to leave our lands because of the armed conflict, and until now we have been unable to return to our home. We hope that this agreement will allow us to return to our homes and to continue our lives.
On the other hand, the fighters of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front turned the combat training camp into a space for celebration after the settlement called for turning in their weapons. However, this agreement does not imply an end to the conflict, but opens the door to a more challenging phase. The next months will prove if the positivity that accompanied the signing of the agreement was temporary, or if it is a new chapter in the history of the Philippines.
Our top story this hour, European satellite company Eutelsat says it's pulled the plug on several Iranian satellite channels based on an order by the European Commission.
We terminated the contracts because that was the order of the European Commission, so we had to follow it. But not under our initiative that we took this decision.
Eutelsat has told Press TV it asked media services company Arqiva to take Iranian satellite channels off one of its hotbird frequencies on Monday. In a separate statement emailed to Press TV, Arqiva says the decision was made by the EU Council. The channels include Press TV, Al-Alam, Jam 1 and 2, Sahar 1 and 2, Islamic Republic of Iran News Network, Quran TV and Al-Kawthar. European satellite firms had been jamming the Iranian channels for months before the decision was announced. Iran's Arabic language news channel Al-Alam has been jammed on a daily basis while airing a program on Bahrain. Technical experts say the jamming was carried out by British technicians. Observers are saying such moves and now the ban show the European Union does not respect freedom of speech and is trying to silence the voice of alternative media. In the headlines today, the Afghan government strongly condemns the killing of 3 civilians by a US-led airstrike in the south of the country. Afghan officials say the victims of the attack in Helmand province were 3 children who were collecting firewood. Afghan media reports say the parents of the victims are calling on authorities for justice. The Western military alliance earlier claimed the airstrike targeted militants. US-led operations in Afghanistan have killed many Afghan civilians over the past decade. Afghans say the operations are creating insecurity in their country. Well, our correspondent in Kabul, Faiz Khurshid, told us earlier civilians are the main victims of attacks launched both by US-led forces and Taliban militants in Afghanistan.
Civilians are usually killed and wounded at the hands of foreign troops by their military operations, by their nighttime raids, and this time by their airstrike in southern Afghanistan. And the number of such deaths is now rapidly growing because the war is raging here in Afghanistan. We have been told by the governor of Helmand province that he informed President Hamid Karzai about the deaths of these 3 children, and now a team of investigation is going to Helmand province to gather more facts about this. And this is, the Afghan people are saying it's not acceptable to them. They want an end to US military operations in Afghanistan because they are saying that such military operations and airstrikes in Afghanistan have only achieved civilian deaths. Over the past 11 years, about 20,000 civilians have been killed here in Afghanistan. Now the United Nations office here in Kabul, civil society, local people and the Afghan government are calling on all warring groups here to avoid civilian casualties by their military operations.
Yalla Vote.
Every election season, the Arab American Institute launches a campaign called Yalla Vote, or Let's Vote, to promote the Arab American vote. This time, the campaign comes amid receding Arab American support for the Democrats. As for the number of Arab American independents, it appears to be continuously growing, reflecting disappointment in the policies of both the Democratic and Republican parties. Nasser Abu Diab reports from Washington.
A
few weeks before the American presidential elections, volunteers are contacting Arab voters to encourage them to vote in the midst of a fierce election campaign and close margins between the Republican candidate Mitt Romney and the President of the United States, Democrat Barack Obama.
Today we're hosting.
What you see is a workshop to contact Arab American voters by phone to encourage them to participate in the elections in 12 states with a concentrated Arab presence.
These contacts are part of the Yalla Vote campaign sponsored by the Arab American Institute. It aims to give political momentum to the Arab American voice and is an attempt to influence the decision-making through unifying and closing in the ranks.
Arab Americans
We, as other Americans, care about the main issues. What distinguishes us is our ability to influence foreign policy. We are like a bridge that connects the United States to the Arab world.
The campaign is based on the efforts of volunteers who get reinvigorated every election season and includes a number of events apart from the phone campaign, such as meetings, forums, and participation in political activities to educate the American community of the importance of their right to vote, regardless of their partisan orientations.
We saw how hugely important.
We are aware of the importance of the vote of ethnic minorities. So we strive to organize the Arab vote and prove that our voice can also make a difference in American policy.
This is a heated presidential race where every vote is important. A large number of people remain undecided, while others haven't even registered to vote, which means the result of these upcoming elections hangs on these voters' choices. Nasser Abu Diab, Dubai TV, Washington.
In Syria, the battles are continuing as new sanctions were imposed by the European Union. Damascus denies using cluster bombs in the conflict and assures that it does not own these types of bombs. And on a tour to the region, UN envoy Lakhdar Brahimi is delivering Iranian proposals to solve the Syrian crisis.
UN envoy Lakhdar Brahimi denies he suggested sending a peacekeeping force to Syria.
Ibrahimi's statement was issued from Baghdad, which he traveled to with Iranian proposals, and where he met with Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Al-Maliki called on Ibrahimi to take action quickly to preserve Syria's unity and the security of the region, as he warned the UN Arab League envoy of Syria's crisis, considering it a danger to its people, neighbors, and world peace. Brahimi had met with a number of Iranian officials and received Iranian proposals, which, according to Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian, includes a transition phase in Syria under the supervision of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that would lead to presidential and parliamentary elections. The proposals also include ending the violence, implementing a ceasefire, and an end to sending weapons and endorsing armed groups, and conducting a national dialogue between the opposition and the government.
There are some ideas in your proposals which can help by adding to that forwarded by other nations who are also important with regards to the Syrian situation.
French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius announced that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov informed France that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad will never leave and will remain until further notice, noting that Russia's stance in favor of al-Assad is becoming increasingly stubborn. Fabius's words came after a European Union meeting imposing additional sanctions on Syrian figures and companies. In Doha, the Opposition General Secretariat of the Syrian National Council held meetings presided by Abdel Bassat Seda to discuss the situation on the ground and the political situation in Syria, in addition to relief efforts for refugees. At the Turkish border, the new confrontation was with planes. Ankara said that its military fighter jets forced an Armenian plane to land in the eastern part of the country to search it before heading to the Syrian city of Aleppo. The Armenian Yerevan was quick to deny the stance by announcing that the Armenian cargo plane was transporting humanitarian aid to Syria and had asked permission to use Turkish airspace beforehand, and that it was agreed that it would land in a Turkish airport. On the ground, Syrian opposition websites posted scenes of a massacre that it said occurred in Daraya in the countryside of Damascus by the Syrian regime. 8 soldiers from the regime's army were killed in an attack by a booby-trapped car that opponents had set up at a Syrian army checkpoint at the entrance of the city. In Idlib, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that clashes are continuing for the 3rd consecutive day near the largest military base in the region, the Wadi Daif base in Ma'arrat al-Nu'man. On the other hand, Syrian TV said that Bashar al-Assad issued a decree to form a committee to repair the Great Umayyad Mosque in Aleppo, which is the oldest historical Islamic landmark in Syria, and was burned due to clashes in the mosque. Syrian TV showed images from inside the mosque and said that opposition fighters had wreaked havoc to its contents, as opposition websites denied that the Free Syrian Army has lost control of the mosque.
The Libyan National General Congress elected Ali Zaidan as Prime Minister, granting him 15 days to form a government. Zaidan vowed to form a government composed of all political factions. He stressed the priority is to solve the main issues in the country and to rebuild the country's essential components.
The political scenario in post-revolution Libya appears to be moving toward additional breakthroughs and clarity. After the government of Abdelrahman al-Kib completed its tasks and Mustafa Abu Shagur failed to form a government, the National General Assembly elected Ali Zaidan as the country's new prime minister for the transitional phase. Zaidan, who is backed by the coalition of national forces under the leadership of Mahmoud Jibril, received 93 votes. In contrast, his opponent, Mohammed al-Harari, the minister of the current local government, who is backed by the Islamist movement, received 85 votes.
We wish him success and call on all parties and all political factions to cooperate and support Mr. Ali Zaidan in forming his government.
Several challenges await Zaidan, who has vowed to form a government comprised of all the country's political factions within 2 weeks. He assured that he will work on implementing the achievements of the transitional phase.
A government will be formed within 2 weeks. This government will be one of national consensus, and we will try to include in it all sides that create consensus among the Libyans. It will be a temporary government according to the constitutional declaration.
Zaidan, who was born in 1950 in the city of Wadan in Al-Jifra, holds a master's in international relations. He has been a member of the National Front to Save Libya since the 1980s and an official spokesman for the Libyan League for Human Rights since 1989. He was a member of the National General Assembly for Al-Jifra before resigning to be nominated for the post of Prime Minister. Observers believe a significant legacy awaits the Zaidan government. On its agenda is guaranteeing the security and stability for Libyans through prohibiting the distribution of weapons and imposing the country's control in all arenas.
نقلت طائرة إماراتية الطالبة الباكستانية ملالة.
An Emirati plane transferred Pakistani student Malala Yousafzai to Britain for treatment nearly 1 week after being shot by Taliban gunmen for demanding the right to education for girls.
وأثارت حالة ملالة التي تبلغ من العمر
14-year-old Malala's condition sparked global sympathy.
هذا مع مسيرات شبه يومية في المدن الباكستانية.
This comes as near-daily marches were held in Pakistani cities denouncing what its organizers said is the misrepresentation and extremist understanding of Islam adopted by the Taliban movement.
اسمها ملالة وهنا تنقل الفتاة ذات 14 ربيعا.
Her name is Malala, and from here, the 14-year-old girl is being transferred in an Emirati plane to Britain for treatment. Since being shot last week, Malala has become a symbol throughout her country, Pakistan. And as her story spread, the issue became one of global and public interest. Malala lived in the Swat Valley, located on the border with Afghanistan. It's also where the Pakistani Taliban movement flourished, ruled, and dominated. Maulana Fazlullah secured his grip on the area after an agreement with the Pakistani authorities years ago. And since this man has a particular approach to Islam, he sought to deprive girls of an education.
فجرت حركته مدارس للفتيات ونفذت حكم الإعدام.
His movement blew up girls' schools and carried out death sentences against those whose behavior he and his movement viewed as immoral. The girl, Malala, who wanted to become a doctor when she grows up, stood up to them. She started her campaign for the right to education at the age of 11. Back then, she wrote on her blog challenging those with an extremist understanding of Islam.
وواصلت الطفلة دفاعها عن حق يقول كثير.
The child preceded her defense of a right many say was obvious 14 centuries ago. She initiated her campaign, so they initiated their war. They spread death threats against her in newspapers. They placed their threat under her home's front door, but the brave Malala, as she is now described, did not back down. They fired at her as she was leaving her school in the Swat Valley.
أصيبت ملالة في الرأس والعنق وفقدت الوعي.
Malala was hit in the head and neck and lost consciousness. Her sympathizers say she awoke the consciousness of the entire country. Malala, in their opinion, has become a symbol and is no longer an individual, but a cause.
من أجل ملالة فتيات وفتيان في عمرها صلوا وتضرعوا.
They organized marches and prayed for Malala. Girls and boys of her age prayed and supplicated God for Malala's healing. They also raised their voice against what they described as a misconception and extremist understanding of Islam. However, their voice that was heard beyond their borders does not appear to have reached the Taliban.
هاجموا أمس فقط نقطة تفتيش جنوبية بشاور.
Yesterday alone, hundreds of the movement's fighters attacked a checkpoint south of Peshawar. The police say they killed and injured some and committed even worse acts. They slaughtered a policeman and, according to the same source, took his head with them as they were leaving the scene.
The 18th Knesset reconvened in Jerusalem today for the start of its winter session. But by tonight, the Knesset is expected to vote to dissolve itself and officially announce new national elections in exactly 100 days from now. The session opened with the traditional speeches by Knesset Speaker Reuven Rivlin, President Shimon Peres, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and opposition leader Shaul Mofaz. And just back from the Knesset is our reporter R.A. O'Sullivan. He joins me now in the studio. A busy day for Knesset reporters.
Yes, it was, Yochanan. At 4 o'clock today, there was a packed house at the Knesset with all 120 members present and with members of the public and foreign dignitaries observing from the upper decks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave what could be described as the first election speech of this campaign, giving a quick rundown of the changes in the past 4 years of his government. He said his coalition brought the economy from decline to growth, stemmed the flood of illegal immigrants from Sinai, invested in education, and aggressively confronted Iran's attempt to get nuclear weapons. He even recalled how he brought home captured Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Said Netanyahu, "There is one thing we didn't do. We didn't do any unnecessary wars. We didn't do any wars. We didn't have a light hand on the trigger, but a steady hand on the trigger." Head of the opposition, Mofaz, grabbed hold of the social justice banner, saying the economic gaps have grown under Netanyahu, and warned that the prime minister had put efforts to make peace with the Palestinians in the corner and brought closer a binational state. His days in power may have been longer than others, but his deeds have been little and lack any significance, he said. President Peres used the opportunity to urge the next government to seek a peace arrangement with the Palestinians, but noted a tough hand was necessary against Iran. Peres also said that the great friendship with the United States should be respected. Peres said Israel shouldn't rest on its laurels, but yearn for scientific excellence, and he called for education and research to be given the highest priorities in the next government. Knesset Speaker Rivlin noted that only 3 times in Israel's history has the Knesset opened for 5 sessions. These elections are taking place for all the right reasons, he said, for economy, for social agenda, civil issues, and diplomatic and security issues. The public doesn't want slogans, it wants answers. He urged the politicians to respect the intelligence of the Israeli voters, and he called on Israeli citizens to get out and vote. Earlier in the day, there was a buzz of excitement and urgency as members converged in the Knesset. While this is the longest-serving Knesset in 24 years, this session is likely to be the shortest ever in history. The Knesset members returned after a 4-month vacation, and late tonight are expected to dissolve the Knesset in 3 separate votes of the election bill. So, Yochanan, this is in effect letting the vacation continue for another 3 months to elections for the 19th Knesset, which leaves them plenty of time to hit the campaign trail. And finally, Yochanan, it's estimated that a quarter of the faces of this Knesset won't be back.
We shall see. Thanks, Aryeh.
The Israeli newspaper Yalla Vote lifted the veil off secret peace negotiations between Tel Aviv and Damascus that occurred before the latest tensions erupted in Syria. During the negotiations, Netanyahu expressed willingness to completely withdraw from the occupied Golan Heights. Sources close to Netanyahu rushed to deny the news, claiming the Golan is considered a strategic asset that must not be given up.
This was in 2010. In today's issue, the Israeli newspaper Yedayot Aharonot revealed that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu conducted secret negotiations with the Syrian regime to reach peace between Tel Aviv and Damascus. Behind closed doors, Netanyahu agreed to completely withdraw from the Golan Heights, including returning to the June 4th borders, in return for full peace with Syria that includes exchanging ambassadors and mandating Syria to cut its relations with Tehran. Basing its claim on American documents, Yedayot Aharonot said that Netanyahu assigned American diplomat Fred Hoff to conduct the secret negotiations. Hoff had worked for the American Navy and is an expert on border demarcation in disputed areas. He was also responsible for the Syrian-Lebanese file in the Obama administration. According to Yedayot Aharonot, the American administration was shocked at the flexibility that Netanyahu expressed during the negotiations and his willingness to withdraw, which exceeded that of any former Israeli prime minister, including Yitzhak Rabin, Ehud Barak, and Ehud Olmert. The newspaper also said that Netanyahu moderated the negotiations in absolute secrecy and hid them from even his cabinet and from Mossad and Shabak, and that negotiation sessions took place at his official headquarters in occupied Jerusalem and at his villa in Caesarea. The newspaper noted that Barak was the only minister who was aware of these negotiations, in addition to Netanyahu's military advisor, Major General Yohanan Loker, Major General Azi Ared, Netanyahu's political consultant, Ron Dermer, and Barak's military advisor, Mark Herzog. As for the American side, President Barack Obama, his Vice President Joe Biden, and the mediator, Fred Hoff, were the only ones who were aware of the details of these negotiations.
وقد وافق نتنياهو بحسب ما أوردته الصحيفة على الانسحاب حتى خط المياه على شواطئ بحيرة طبرية حيث اشترط.
According to the newspaper, Netanyahu had agreed to withdraw to the shores of Tabaria Lake, as Syria had stipulated the withdrawal must be completed within 2 years, while Israel preferred a longer period of time. However, bloody events erupted in Syria and put an end to these negotiations. Netanyahu's office was quick to comment on the news by saying that the talks are one initiative among many that the Americans had offered Israel, but that they were rejected, adding that publishing this news at this time was done for political reasons and considerations.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.